So communication is key. We all know this. It's essential to who we are and how we operate through this life. If we don't communicate, this world would be very silent. However, it is not. This world is very loud. And we all communicate. And communicate means like to speak and to listen. And we tend to think that communication only lies in the world of words. But we can communicate by our actions, by our looks. You know, like when you look at your friend across the room and you don't have to say a thing, but you know exactly what you're thinking. And we communicate through a movement of body, through not speaking and only listening, receiving what we are hearing. And in the last years, communication has developed into a clicking of a heart, a thumbs up or a thumbs down to what we see online. And it also comes in the form of writing. We communicate if we speak loudly or if we don't speak at all. Silence can also be communication. Communication all started with God. It is how he operates. And when he created man and woman, he created us with this essential ability to communicate. We are made in his image. We were created to have fellowship with him, which means to speak with him, to listen to him. And he created us to converse with us and to have a relationship with us. And I want us to just stop right there and think about that. Each person in this room was designed by God for relationship. Like, we can't move past that. That has to be the foundation of our hearts, of how we live, of our faith in God, that he created me to have communion with him, the God of the universe. He doesn't need me, but he wanted to converse with me. He wanted to talk to me. He wanted to listen to my thoughts. This is an amazing thought. And we can all agree that we live in a world which we find ourselves in, which is very noisy and very loud, and loud with opinions and arguments and statements. You may be contributing to the noise, I'm not quite sure, or you may be plugging your ears because you're tired of it all. But we can all agree that there are a lot of voices speaking. And this can be happening in our direct circles with our friends. We can have very opinionated friends. But it's also happening through our phones, through our TVs, through technology. Everyone has an opinion. Sometimes, most times, I want to shut out the voices because it becomes quite overwhelming. Almost like a clanging cymbal. From 1 Corinthians 13, if you do not have love, it sounds like a clanging cymbal. The sound of communication in our world today has a strong essence of chaos and confusion. So tonight I want to speak to you all. I'm going to assume something, and if I assume wrong, I apologize. But I'm assuming that a lot of us in this room follow Jesus. And if you are here tonight and you don't follow Jesus, I speak to you as well because the essence of this talk is the premise of love, which we are invited to and we all desire. So we're kind of all on the same page regarding this. I could easily speak to you about how your phones have kind of killed our ability to communicate with the person right next to us. I remember I was working at Starbucks way back when, and this is when that phrase BRB came out. I don't know if you guys know this phrase. Yeah, do you know BRB? Or LOL. And I remember this girl I was working with, I said something, and she looked at me, she's like, LOL. And I was like, what? She's like, I just laughed out loud. I'm like, no, you didn't. You are not laughing. You actually just have a straight face. She's like, well, it was funny. I'm like, well, then laugh. Anyways. So that's when it all started, killing our ability to actually communicate with the person right in front of us. And how our phones have actually limited our attention span. You can do studies, you can do it all. But it's unfortunate because it's actually robbed us from being present with the person beside us and saying, wow, you look amazing today, instead of just liking a picture on Instagram. Or, how was that trip you went on? Tell me about your trip. Tell me about the details, the food. Tell me everything, instead of just looking at a picture and scrolling. So, to be honest, my personality would lend itself to talk about this for hours, because I can be a bit more motherly and shake my finger at y'all, but I'm not going to do that tonight. I was really praying about asking God, like, how do we speak about communication, a life skill that you built in us? So we should probably learn from you how to communicate. I want to call us higher to an invitation of what's in front of us and what we might have ignored over time. So we as humans are designed to listen and to speak. However, we determine how much we want to listen. We determine how much we want to speak. We determine how much we want to take in or give out, even let sink in or contribute to who we are. We are the decision makers for our own lives. And we operate this way because of our stories and because where we have come from. We may have been raised in homes where communication, speaking, and listening were not part of the rhythm. You're seen and not heard. We may have witnessed our parents actually not sharing what was truly going on in their lives with each other. We may have witnessed our parents never speaking to one another, just rolling through life. We may have been hurt by friends, peers in school, workplace people, when we share something of our hearts and we get turned down or get made fun of. Therefore, we just put up walls. We guard our hearts, not allowing people's words, good or bad, to have an effect on us. We may have risked speaking with friends about something deep within us that we're struggling with, that we're ashamed of, that we're embarrassed with. And they may have flippantly cast it off or made a comment, not received it, have crushed us. And so we have let that affect us, and we've put up walls, and we've guarded our hearts. We may have risked speaking with friends about something deep within, and now we don't trust. We carry shame, and therefore transparency with the closest among us becomes non-existent. We can't be authentic because of the culture around us. The culture we live in today is exactly how people refer it to, the cancel culture. We need to think before we speak so we don't get ostracized, which then leads to forms of muteness, and we end up not speaking. We don't know how to listen because we have numbed ourselves through so many ways because it's easier not to listen and feel. It hurts less. It's pain-free. If no one says anything to me, we hide. So we have become mute and we have become hidden. Or we have followed culture and have become loud and opinionated about everything. And we join the crowd around us. And maybe you've experienced all of these things growing up in your life, and now you have said, screw it. I'm going to fight for my voice in this world, and it will be heard. And I will make people listen to me. They will hear me. I will force them to listen to my thoughts, whether they like it or not. You don't care anymore. You will speak. So there's these two avenues. And all of these circumstances we may have experienced in life can shape us in how we communicate, how we listen, and how we speak. And then on top of this, the world we live in, the culture around us, dictates to us what is okay to say and what is okay not to say, how we should say it, how it needs to accommodate everyone, and if not, we are beaten down. So why even try? It's tough. But as Jesus followers, should we have these limits around us? Should we give in to these barriers around communication? Should we allow the culture of the world to determine how we listen and how we speak? Should we continue with the wounds of our upbringing, which have now put us in a mute position? As followers of Jesus, our mandate is actually to go into the world and share the good news. Share about Jesus, share about how we met him and how he has impacted our lives with love. Sharing is a form of communication. The Bible refers to all of us who follow Jesus as ambassadors. And ambassadors basically means those who represent Jesus, right? You represent the ways of heaven, the ways of God's kingdom on the earth. So if this is our calling, how do we communicate when we have been shaped by our own personal stories and the culture we find ourselves in today, where it says, you need to shut up or else? Jesus actually found himself in a similar situation when he came to the earth. He found himself in a culture that was not interested in listening to him. They weren't interested in seeing his miracles or signs. He found himself in a time where people were so close to the line of what the prophets of old had prophesied about the future. The prophets of old in Isaiah said this, talking to the generation that was coming. Your ears are open, but you don't hear a thing. Your eyes are awake, but you don't see a thing. This is the Message translation. So, the people are stupid. They stick their fingers in their ears so they won't have to listen. They screw their eyes shut so they won't have to look. So they won't have to deal with me face to face and to let me heal them. So when Jesus came to the earth, he brought words of life. He operated in miracles, signs, and wonders. He went around encouraging people. And this was meant to captivate people and have them look to heaven in awe, but also that they were in need of something so much more. Jesus came to heal hearts and bodies. He came to bring life. And when Jesus came to earth, he found that people weren't willing to listen, weren't willing to see the miracles, which communicated God's love. They weren't willing to surrender and meet with Jesus, who was able to heal them and save them. He found himself in a culture that was just not interested in the things of God. Or if they were, it was only a God they had created themselves. It was their own opinion, their own rules, their own theology, their own religion, which they were interested in and only willing to communicate with. And even when Jesus spoke, he was ridiculed, mocked, judged. Ultimately, the people around him tried to silence him. Sound familiar? Do we live in a time that's similar to this? So if we are followers of Jesus and we have been mandated by him to share his love and communicate his ways and share with those around us, that Jesus is truly the only way to a Father in heaven who loves us and desires to be reunited with his children, the people he created. How then do we share openly and honestly through our own mess and brokenness? How do we share this beautiful invitation to people around us when people around us have hard hearts because of their own personal stories? Jesus found himself probably asking the same question because he found himself before people who weren't willing to communicate because of walled hearts, brokenness, religious mindsets. And we don't see this in Scripture, but I wonder if Jesus prayed to God and asked, how do we communicate to this generation that's before me? How do we share our love? And Jesus found a way to reach the people who surrounded him. His disciples approached him one day and said, "Why do you tell stories?" Stories equals parables. And Jesus was a very gifted person for telling stories. And Jesus replied, speaking to those who had accepted him and knew who he was, and were given the front row to the things of the kingdom and the way of the kingdom. This was Jesus' answer to their question, why do you tell stories? In Matthew 13, you will find this. And he says this, "You've been given insight into God's kingdom." So imagine Jesus is talking to all of you right now that know him. You have been given insight into God's kingdom. You know how it works. Not everybody has this gift, this insight. It hasn't been given to them. Whenever someone has a ready heart for this, the insights and understandings flow freely. But if there is no readiness, any trace of receptivity soon disappears. That's why I tell stories. To create readiness, to nudge the people toward a welcome awakening. In their present state, they can't stare till doomsday and not see it. Listen till they're blue in the face and not get it. And I don't want Isaiah's forecast repeated all over again. Your ears are open, but you don't hear a thing. Your eyes are awake, but you don't see a thing. The people are stupid. They stick their fingers in their ears so they won't have to listen. They screw their eyes shut so they won't have to look. So they won't have to deal with me face to face and to let me heal them. But you have God-blessed eyes, eyes that see, and God-blessed ears, ears that hear. A lot of people, prophets and humble believers among them, would have given anything to see what you are seeing, to hear what you are hearing, but never had the chance. So we see in this text that Jesus is reminding his disciples, you and I, that we need discernment on how to communicate with those around us who have fingers in their ears and aren't willing to listen. And Jesus needed discernment on how to communicate, and the stories he told actually created a readiness in people's hearts to receive. It somehow bypassed the mind and went straight into their spirits and awakened something within. So we are called to do the same with our words, with our communication. We need as much discernment today in the culture we live in to know how to share a hope everyone needs. And this is our life skill as followers of Jesus. This is our life skill, which we need Jesus' help with. It is essential to know how to communicate, especially when our mandate is to go into all the world and preach the good news. It's essential when the enemy has created a culture that says you've been canceled. But our response should say, oh, but we know a love. Some of you are sitting here wondering, how can I do this? Even though I am a follower of Jesus, I too find myself with a hard heart. I think I might be deaf or blind to the things of God. I find myself muted through my life's circumstances. I wasn't raised on how to communicate my thoughts, my heart, my emotions. I'm scared to really say what I think or share my dreams and share even my failures. I can't be transparent. Some of you are saying, I love God, but to share about this love, I simply just don't know how. Then there are some of you sitting here thinking, I do tell people about Jesus and his hope. I post about it on the socials. I tell people to their face, I'm passionate, yet no one hears me. I'm trying to yell louder than the culture around me. So my questions to you specifically would be, is it passion or zeal? Have you become a zealot for God? Are you cutting people's ears off so they no longer can hear or even wish to hear? Are you like Peter in the Bible who cut off the ear of the man in his desire and passion to please and to protect Jesus, who doesn't need our protection? His motive was right, but the posture was off. You haven't stopped to listen or to see the person standing in front of you and to ask the Spirit, how does this person hear? I personally have been both of these people. I've cut off ears, not physically, just for the record. But out of my loyalty to God, I'm a very loyal person and very, I'll defend anybody I love. And out of my protection for God, I was very zealous. But God never asked me to protect him. He did ask me to share about his love. And I've also stood there on mute, not knowing how to share my thoughts with friends, my ideas or discernments around the staff meeting. I've been on mute. And this all stems from the heart. How we operate in our lives stems from the issues of our heart. Proverbs says, out of the heart, the mouth speaks. That is why my life question to people around me, my mandate question, is how is your heart? Is it broken? Is it hurting? Fractured? Hard, hidden, numb, mute? If we don't allow God to heal our hearts, then the other option is we allow our hurts to silence us. And on top of that, if the enemy can silence us, then he knows we won't tell others about God's love. And this is a perfect plan for him. So how do you and I, who have been created to communicate with the Father in heaven and with others, how do we do this when it seems that we've been damaged or hindered, or we find ourselves mute? Well, the first thing I really want to highlight is that we, again, were made in the image of God, which involves the communication, listening and speaking, fellowship. God knows you. He knows you. He made you. He formed you in your mother's womb. He knit you together, and he knows everything about you. And because he knows you, he loves you, and he desires to speak with you. He desires to spend time with you. And so some of you are saying, well, then if he knows me, great, perfect. But in a relationship, and most of us know that, it's a two-way street. God isn't forceful. He won't impose himself on you. He desires for you to turn around and say, God, I want you to know me, and I want to know you. It's that relationship, that interaction, why he formed you. David says in the Psalms, you know my comings and my goings. You know everything about me. You know when I lie down. You know when I sleep. But yet God still desires for you to speak with him, to share your thoughts and be honest with him. And I think a lot of us have a hard time being honest with God. I don't know why. I do. Even though he knows everything about me, to turn around and say it to him, it's difficult. But he wants you to come to him with your thoughts, with your dreams, ideas, hopes. He wants you to come to him with your hurt, your fractures, your trauma, your struggles, your depression, your anxiety, your addictions. He wants you to come to him with them. There's no shame with him. There's no rejection. There's only a welcoming embrace. I don't know if we fully realize what is available for us in this difficult world and a difficult life. I don't know if we fully grasp the invitation that's before us to be known by God. See, when God formed us, he formed us with a place to be known inside. And if that's not filled by our Father in heaven, we will try to fill that in a different way. We will fill it with addictions. We'll fill it with sleeping around. We'll fill it with any other form, just binge watching TV all the time. But we'll fill it because it has to be filled, because it was created within us. But if it's not filled rightly, and that is by our Father in heaven, it gets messy. And it causes a lot of problems. It causes the sin in this world, and it's probably why we're in the state we are in. And when we finally turn to him and say, God, I want to know you, and I want you to know me, that feeling of home will arrive within. That feeling of being known will settle every storm within. It'll be the foundation of your life, and it'll be peace. So to be known, you need to speak, and you need to listen. And it may sound weird, but when I drive, I talk to God. People probably think I'm on the phone, but I'm not. I'm talking to Jesus. And I talk to him, and I just tell him everything I can about my life. There's waves of it. I don't do it every day, but I share with him the burdens I'm carrying. I share with him my hopes, my dreams. I talk to him, or if you're at the gym, or if you're at work, or if you're in the shower, these are times where you speak to him. It's not just a Monday night or a Sunday thing. It's a daily thing where we turn to him and we're like, God, what did you think about that? Or when I've mistreated somebody, I'll walk away and I'll be like, oh, God, I'm sorry. I can feel that really hurt you. Okay. And I have to work that through with God. This is how we build that relationship with God and how we communicate with him. We have seen God's love for us so we can trust it. We have felt his love so we can trust him. We have heard his words towards us, his thoughts, so we can trust him. And some of us have been, we have seen people in parental figures over our lives that have really hurt and crushed us, so it shapes the way that we see God. And so to imagine a God that doesn't turn you away or reject you or shame you or embarrass you, it can be a really difficult thing, like a difficult way to approach God because that's all you've known. But I'm here to assure you that that's not the God we serve. He doesn't shame you, and he doesn't reject you. So if speaking with God is not happening in your life, then at the end of the service, I just really felt like God really wanted to have a moment where we can actually check our hearts with him and ask him to come in and know us, but also that we would come to know him. He's safe. He is the safest. And I've learned that throughout my years, that he is so safe and he is constant. And so there's a story in the Bible, which is one of my favorite stories in the last couple of years. It's the woman at the well, and she encountered Jesus, who told her everything about her life. And in that moment, with him telling her everything about her life, she felt known by God. And what did it do to her? It says she ran back to her town and said to everyone, "Come and meet the man who knows everything about me." Her encounter with love, to be known, caused her to run and share this love. And it set something free within her. This is available for us as well. Also, I wanted to encourage us that God is the God of family and friendship. He created us in a family. He created friendships. And he created us to do life with people. We aren't supposed to do this alone. That just, isolation causes a lot of problems. It's a different night of talking. But our close friends and family are really important to us. So we don't have to do life alone. And we find ourselves in healthy, I'm going to just highlight the healthy part. Make sure you find yourselves in healthy relationships and friendships with family, friends, spouses. One spouse. I was Old Testament vibes, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I have one. And in these relationships, there has to be an essence of vulnerability. And it's to be known by those around you. And that's why I say they have to be healthy and safe. Like, don't be casting your pearls in front of swine. Like, don't be sharing your heart with people that you have seen have really hurt other people, who actually tell you about other people's stories, because if they're telling you about other people's stories, they're probably telling your story to other people. Don't be a gossip in this room. That's just a little side note. But you want to be in relationships where people aren't going to shame you or judge you, but they will encourage you. They'll pray with you. They'll cheer you on. And Jesus even had these people in his life. He had a couple close friends, and he shared his time with them. And in a place of vulnerability, Jesus requested help from his friends. He was going to the garden, and he was going to know what was set before him in the crucifixion. And he said to his friends, "Can you come with me and pray?" This is Jesus, the Son of God. He was requesting friends to be with him. He was being vulnerable and transparent with them. They weren't the best of friends. They fell asleep. But if you see it, it sees that if Jesus needs it, we need it. And it's an accountability. We need friends for accountability. We need friends to, remind us, correct us if we're going off course, challenge us, call us higher. This is essential for your growth as an individual. So with these areas being sorted out and being healed in your life, it allows us the freedom and boldness to go about God's business. And that is telling people about Jesus, his love, sharing about this amazing love we have come to know and to be known. Our hearts are in a healthy place. And so we approach the world from a place of love. We ask the Holy Spirit in moments, how do I share this? Do I use a story? Do I ask questions? And after the scene where Peter cut off the ear of the servant, he found himself with Jesus, and Jesus ended up asking him some questions. "Peter, do you love me? Feed my sheep. Do you love me? Shepherd my sheep." And when you think of feeding sheep, we all know that we don't pin a sheep down and shove food in its mouth. Some may, I don't know, I'm not a farmer. But I haven't seen it. It might be weird. But you normally lay food out in a trough, and the sheep come, and they eat gradually. They eat slowly. They eat at their own rhythm. But the food has been set before them. We feed them. We don't starve them. We're not silent. Sometimes our silence can end up starving the people around us. We lay food out in front of them in a kind manner. Peter was asked this question 3 times by Jesus, and on paper, they are questions and answers, but I wonder if there was a transformation happening within Peter, redeeming his zealous nature into one of true love and boldness. Jesus reminding him what this was all about, and that was love and feeding those that need to hear. And it worked. Peter went on to start the early church where he preached, communicated, and thousands of people added to the church daily. He wasn't cutting off ears anymore. He was now speaking from a place of true love and from being known. And his message didn't lack boldness or passion. He still spoke from a place where he truly desired for all people to know what he had come to know. He spoke from love, for love. He was shepherding. And when you allow yourself to be known by God and to know God, your identity is confirmed. And it's from this place you learn to speak and to listen. So I personally will never be a loud communicator. I'm not a loud individual. I tend to listen more than speak. I like to ask questions. I listen for the thread of the conversation, and then we'll speak to that and highlight where God is in a person's story. In the book of James, it says this: be slow to speak and quick to listen. We need more listening in this world. We need to hear where people are coming from and to listen between the lines. And I still deal with moments of being mute, being frozen. I have many awkward moments of silence. I still am learning how to use my voice to those around me, to those at the table. I am a student as well, learning. I haven't arrived, but I truly want to grow in this area. My husband, Clifford, helps me in this a lot. He is an amazing communicator. He is showing me I have a safe place within our home to share my thoughts and ideas, which is different than my upbringing. And he challenges me. Sometimes we're in a deep conversation, I'll just look out the window, and he's like, are you done? Like, do you have something to say? I'm like, I'm thinking. So I stand here tonight speaking to myself as well. I have a lot of heart work to do too. So I'd like to invite the band back up. And I want to conclude with this. I want to bring it back to Jesus and his brilliant way of reaching the culture that he was in. He's not physically here on earth today, so he definitely needs us to reach the culture that we are in. And he reached the culture by telling these simple, beautiful, confusing at times stories. These stories awakened people, they challenged the religious, and drew hearts in. And when we are faced with a world which loves to debate and to argue, and in the end have come to no answers, but just more confusion, we need creativity and wisdom from God and how to share his love. How do we share his love with those who have plugged their ears or closed their eyes? If I had the answer, I would tell you. But I don't have an answer, but I have a thought. And maybe it's this. Maybe it's by allowing yourself to share from your heart what God has done in your life. How you have been encountered by love himself. To tell your story to somebody in front of you, physically in front of you. To tell your story how you were living this way and now you're living this way. And what the change was. It might be telling someone how you suffer from depression, but for some reason you're not struggling anymore with it. You have a joy in you that is unusual. Maybe it's telling someone that you used to be someone who cut themselves. So they felt something else. But now all you have are scars on your arms, which signify that you don't do it anymore because you've met love. Maybe it's you were addicted to drugs, to something. And I work in a place where addiction is the main thing. And I have seen men and women's lives transformed because they have encountered love. So maybe it's time to share your story with no shame, but to be okay with being vulnerable. And know that whatever comes back at you, hate, discouragement, that we won't really feel it as much because we know that we are known by God and we know God. It's our anchor. And just a reminder, we were promised hate when we share Jesus. So if that's what you're experiencing when you tell people about the love of God, you're experiencing closed off ears, people walking away, you're on track. The world is being preached at every day and through all methods, by all people, by all religions. But story captures hearts. When someone shares their story, it stops and it makes you listen. There's something captivating about stories, about someone's personal journey. You can't deny someone's story. You can't. And I want to remind you all tonight, I told you in the beginning that, gosh, this is a good-looking room. But I want to remind you tonight that your story is captivating. Your story with love is like no one else's story. That it holds truths in it that will speak to other people. It holds keys for other people. Your story is very important. And God so wants your heart to be healed and your voice to be free so that you can actually share the story of the encounter you have had with him, because it will change other people's lives. So open up to God and share your heart. Allow him to heal you, to affirm you, to mark you by his love. Let him show you the thread of his goodness in your life. Allow yourself to be known by him. Allow your heart to come alive. And open up to those around you. Use your voice. Be vulnerable with safe people. And then share your story and what God has done in your life. People will start to pull their fingers out of their ears and open their eyes because your story is so unique. It's marked by love and has started to awaken a readiness in hearts to receive the beautiful love of Jesus. Then listen for the response of those people. Listen to what the person says. Listen to how they say it and why they say it. Ask questions. Ask the Holy Spirit in moments. And sometimes you don't actually even need to say a word or provide an answer. The person will still experience the feeling of being known, a familiar sense of home that was created deep within them that has been empty, but somehow is being awakened by sitting in a conversation with you. And that is because you carry the Holy Spirit within you. So don't be silent. Don't be loud. Don't cut off ears. But allow love to shape the words you speak and the way you hear. This is your life skill. And it starts with communing with him and then communing with others. All from the place of love. It was created within you when you were being formed in your mother's womb. So I'd ask you all to please stand. Everyone in this room has experienced hurt, experienced being shut down because of what you said, and so we all have these little fractures in our hearts. Unless you've worked through them, that's wonderful. But in this space, I want us to actually just, close our eyes and talk to God. And just ask him if there's any fractures in my heart right now that's actually causing me not to speak about your love. Are there any wounds in my heart that are actually putting me on mute? And if there's people in this room that are saying, God, I don't know you, but I want to know you, say that to him. He's so close to you. Or you can say, God, come and know me. I invite you in to know me. So as the team leads us in worship, just in this space, I would really ask for that heart reflection, a healing of hearts, for out of the heart the mouth speaks. And God will heal hearts. It's in his word, it's his promise.